How do you become the top 1% in your industry? What would life look like if you were in that top 1%? What does it even mean to me to be in that top 1%? What would you get paid if you were in that top 1%? That's what we're going to talk about today on the A Players episode. So tune in and listen to the full episode. So welcome to the A Players podcast. I'm your host, and I'm here to build you into a 100K earner and beyond. I mentor and work with people that are looking to raise their income, and that's what the A Players podcast is here to do, to interview people and for me to share journeys, not just mine, but other people's journeys of how you can really, really increase your income and change your life. Look, I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to step into wealth. And we do that by creating the A Players podcast, how you can become an ace in the right place. Yeah, a true A player. And that's what we're talking about today. A players are in that 1% bracket. Yeah, leaving the 99% club behind, joining that 1% club of how they can be some of the top people in the world, and they're known for it as well. So what would it mean to you if you were in that top 1%? Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. How to create a path to success, giving you a complete roadmap of how you can get into that 1% in your industry. Why would you want to be in that 1%? Well, look, people in that 1% club, they get paid more. They get not just paid more, they get known for being the A player in the industry. So what would it be like if you just had inbound inquiries? You were a person that was in such demand that people were just reaching out to you, yeah, following you for your advice, doing things where they would seek you out to get more help so they can have you a part of their life. Yeah, because remember the rule of the A players, yeah, and the 100K club. This is what we speak about in these episodes. If you want to earn more, you've got to be of value to more people, okay? So being in that top 1% puts you at more value to people. So I'm going to give you 8 steps today of how you can start to work towards being that top 1%, okay? So number 1, you got to define what your top 1% is. Define your top 1%. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, look, if you can find the metrics of what you need to hit, you know you're in 1%. So what does it even mean to be in 1%? What sort of figures, what sort of numbers do you need to be hitting to know that you are in that 1%? And sometimes it's a surprising shock. And the impact that has when you start to realize either how far you are away from 1% or that you may already be there, it has a psychological impact on you, knowing that you are one of the go-to people. You just probably don't have the awareness yet or the marketing skills to actually put yourself out there to let other people know about it. Yeah. So do you want to be a 1% club, but the world's best kept secret? Yeah. There's a question for you. Why would you want to do that? If you knew you was in the top 1%, what sort of things would that change? How much more confidence would you have? How much more opportunities would you go and seek? How would you start to feel and put yourself out there to your network, knowing that you can help more people because you are in that top 1%? So define your top 1%. Here's an example. Did you know in the podcast world, like you're listening to right now, that to be in the top 1%, you only need to have actually hosted 20 episodes. Yeah, 20 episodes. That's crazy. Why is that? Because 99% of people don't make it to 20 episodes. Crazy, right? A lot of people will do 2 or 3, scratch the itch, and then they will stop podcasting. Okay? So for people to actually go to 5, 7, 8, 9, or 10, yeah, it's getting lower and lower. Yeah, people stop by then. Ask yourself why. Yeah, You think about the hypothesis of what's actually working here, right? Think about the actual process that people are going through. Was it just to scratch an itch to get a podcast started and maybe a dream one day to have a podcast, but they haven't got the tenacity and the resilience to actually go through? Perhaps they started doing a podcast, started feeling a little bit silly. Yeah, a lot of people's biggest fears is they don't like listening to their own voice. Yeah. I mean, I used to have that problem, and yet you're listening to a Peaky Blinder right now speaking to you over a podcast. Yeah, it was some bullshit in my head. Okay, yeah, I've got a bit of an accent and things, and a lot of people don't like listening to their own voice, but you'll find that doesn't slow me down. Yeah, it doesn't slow me down. In fact, getting over that hurdle was all part of the journey to moving forward into that top 1%. A lot of people won't go there. They just won't go there because they care too much about what people think, what their Uncle Bob says. There's lots of things that are coming into play here, isn't there? What will people think of me if I become more successful? What sort of things will I have to sacrifice if I'm going to be in the top 1%? What much more hard work do I have to do to be in that top 1%? All these things start to get in the way. Yeah. And it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit that slows you down, right? So define your number of being the top 1%. For myself, knowing that I've got how many episodes, if you look at all my different podcasts, I mean, there's 3 different podcasts right now. There is over 100 episodes where you can listen to me talking about either business coaching advice, scaling businesses, helping executives, helping for the A Players podcast, helping people become very high income earners. There's over 100 episodes if you search through my name on Spotify and Apple and Google, etc. Right? So for me, and I'm sharing my journey so I can help people break through their bullshit, is that I know with over 100 episodes, that qualifies me now to be a person that is gaining listeners week in, week out on YouTube and Spotify and iTunes, etc. Gaining listeners, I'm adding at least one piece of value to somebody in the world because the listeners are going up. I can see the stats for it. So what that does for me is it puts me into the realm now that this is helping more people. So it then gives me the confidence to then go further. Now, that is like an indicator. By defining that criteria, I know there's an indicator there that if I can just help one person, I'm on purpose. So what about your purpose then? This is the point. If you're going to be in that 1%, you need to know when you are in it. Okay, so I'm not saying go and start your own podcast right now. Yeah, you don't need to. You can do something else that suits you better. So let's say that you was in a job or a role right now and you think, right, okay, who are the top people in my industry in this role? Yeah. What are they doing? What sort of things are they learning? Right? How can I start to just set myself some criteria to know that I would be in that top 1% if I just did things that others won't do? Remember this saying, to achieve what others won't, you've got to do what others don't. Okay? So the simple thing is, like the podcast example that I gave you, just go over 20 episodes and you're in the top 1%. Yeah? For me, when I was doing my business coaching world, to be in the top 1% of business coaches, I know that there's a criteria that I have to hit there as well. Okay. So I won UK Business Coach of the Year 2023. There was a criteria. There's an award for it. What about an award for you? What sort of things in your industry could you look for, go for, achieve, and get your own sort of criteria, your own credibility, your own milestones that you want to hit to know that you are on track? It's really important to define what top 1% looks like for you. Okay. Number 2, building a top 1% mindset. So if you listen to the previous episode, I spoke about psychological capital. So there's a lot of areas of capital in a business. People think about financial capital. Financial capital is what's in the bank, what's your cash flow like, what's the assets, what's the liability in the business. You know what I mean? These are the top line figures, yeah, because at the end of the day, the language of business is numbers. The language of business is numbers. So you need to understand what the numbers are in the business and how they all impact each other. Fascinating stuff when you dig into it. I don't mean you've got to be an accountant, but you've just got to understand these numbers, right? Because if you understand the numbers, you understand how to make an impact. And at some point along that, the cash flow in that business needs to leave that business and into your pocket. So figuring out, understanding numbers would be a pretty good skill to have. Financial capital. What brings in financial capital? Human capital. At the end of the day, organizations is just an organism, yeah? An organism of group of people. A group of people working in a common direction, working towards servicing or providing, manufacturing something to get out there to provide value to somebody in the world, right? So if it's just a group of people, human capital is the business needs to look after its human capital, okay? Who are the best people at doing this? What sort of things do we need to do to attract these people? How do we start to reward these people, et cetera, et cetera? I'm not going to go on about that in this episode, but that's just another example of capital. The third capital is network capital. Who do you know? Okay, so all the people, if you take it down to another level, their network is part of their net worth of the business and the people. Okay, and then below all that is when you are dealing with people, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with states and traits. And this is where psychological capital comes in, is how do you maintain somebody at a high state more often? Okay, and there's 4 areas to psychological capital, and that there is number 1, understanding that that person's direction, that person's drivers is a big part of why they do stuff in human behavior. Okay. Number 2 is that when things get in the way of that direction, then resilience matters. Yeah. That level of resilience. So if you're going to be in the top 1%, what level of resilience have you got? Are you letting people's bullshit talk knock you down? Or are you doing something about it to make sure that you are bulletproof, that you are going to hit and achieve your milestones and goals? Yeah. And not only that, when there is something in the way, how do you pathfind? Pathfinding ability is a big part of psychological capital. And step 3, part 3 of psychological capital is also optimism. How do you perceive the future? How do you perceive tasks? How do you perceive the past? Do things happen to you or do they happen because of you? Yeah, taking ownership of your own thoughts and your own actions, the things that you execute on. And number 4 is self-efficacy or self-efficacy, right? What that means is confidence. Confidence to deliver and know that you've got the skills to do it, okay? Makes a big part of what somebody, how somebody goes through the world and what state they're in, yeah? Some people are up, some people are down. It doesn't mean that person all the time. A state can shift. Trait tends to stay the same. States shift from moment to moment. So it's important that we recognize that we aren't always the same person. We change throughout the day. We change throughout the week. Okay. But if we can stay more consistent with our state, then PsyCap certainly helps that. So how do you build a top 1% mindset? Well, look, wouldn't it be better, right, if you understood that you are in that top 1% more often? So using the criteria from step 1, defining that top 1% gives you that gap, or maybe you're there already to say, look, I'm either in the top 1% or I'm nearly in the top 1%. Or maybe if you're far away from the top 1%, you can at least say every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Okay. Step 3, mastering the art of execution. You've got to be able to execute faster and more often. And this comes back down to mindset as well. Why don't people execute faster? Think about it. Here's 3 phases to remember. Money loves speed. Money loves speed. Then when you've got the money, you need to invest it. Wealth loves time. So investing over time creates wealth. And the third one is poverty loves inaction. So if you aren't taking any steps forward or not executing on anything, then guess what? Any inaction, any indecisions that you have are going to lead to more poverty. It means you're going to stay the same. Okay? So just think about it. Even if you make the wrong move, yeah, you're going to learn from it. If you make a mistake, you'll learn from it. if you fail, oh, what if I fail at this? Or Lewis, what if it's the wrong thing? Or procrastination, overthinking, all this shit gets in the way, right? Right? And then we start to sell ourselves on this denial mode that we are just careful, or we're a realist. Yeah, that's the worst one I ever hear. I'm not a pessimist, Lewis. I'm a realist. No, you're either one. You see what I mean? There's a continuum here, sort of thing, isn't there? There's realist pessimist and realist optimist. Realist doesn't fit into that continuum anywhere. Yeah, it's an excuse, is what it is. You see, so having the execution skills, the ability to execute more often, doesn't mean that you fail. It means that you fail more and take the learnings from it. Yeah, people really, really overestimate what's achievable, what they think they can achieve in 12 months, but they underestimate what's achievable in 5 years. I remember reading or listening to an audiobook, and it said, I think it was Brian Tracy, and it said, well, look, to become a millionaire, you've got to wait 10 years. Yeah, not wait 10 years. You've got to develop yourself over 10 years. Yeah, it's true. You've got to develop yourself over 10 years. When I first started on my journey, then I decided to take an action and go, bang, I'm going to change my life and make it and do something about it. That was when I was 25. So yeah, 38 now. And I can vouch for that it does take time. It's not going to take 1 year. It's not going to take 2 years, but it takes an instant moment for you to decide that you're going to do something fucking about it. Yeah? Stop messing about. Make a decision. That is an instant thing. You got to make a decision. Execute on decisions. Okay. Thank you for listening to the podcast so far. A quick reminder that the A Players podcast and community remains free. The reason we do this podcast is because I believe that a great question to ask is, what advice would you give your younger self? For me, I wish I had a guide that showed me the exact steps to reach 100k a year in any job, and how much my life would be accelerated if I'd cut through that noise and just focused on those steps. We do not run ads or endorse sponsors because it is our mission to give back and share with you, the listener, knowledge gained from working with highly successful individuals and extensive research in management science, so that everyone has access to tools that can accelerate their income and give them the opportunity to step into wealth. In line with allowing us to achieve that mission, we ask that you think about, how did you end up on this podcast today? Maybe it was through finding it on YouTube or Spotify or word of mouth. So please help feed forward by subscribing to the podcast, and also share this podcast with another leader like you that you feel this podcast could really help out in helping them increase their personal income too. Let's get back to the show. Number 4, sharpening your skills. So I did a video on TikTok and Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, Dr. Lewis Haydon, go and check out the videos on there or on TikTok. And something that happened quite well. I'll do these things called 3 things. And every day I'll do a video on 3 things that I'm currently working on, or 3 things that have really helped me in the past on my journey, just to help more people with their journey too. And one thing that I did lately was 3 skills that have really helped me in getting where I am today. And that one of them is that you've got to always be focusing on sharpening the right skills that are going to not just get you where you want to get to. That doesn't make sense. So here's a breakdown of it. One of the skills that I talked about was understanding a P&L, right? Profit and loss. Why do you need to understand the profit and loss? Okay, you're not an accountant. You're just working for a company. But get this, right? If you don't understand how the business makes money, loses money, and then ends up with a profit, then that profit ultimately is the gap, the share of the pie, which is left over to actually spend on giving you more money, yeah, or investing it back in the company, or investing it in marketing for growth, or investing it in scaling up the company. You see, if the business has no profit, then the margin isn't there to actually take anything from the pie. So if you can understand P&L, then you can have better conversations with maybe even above managers, because managers probably don't understand P&L either. Yeah. So if you can have top level conversations with top level people, then guess what? You're solving top level problems. So this is just an example of sharpening your skills. Yeah. And I always say that anyone who wants to be an A player, yeah, or join the 100K club, you better start to know this fucking stuff, because you're not going to get paid 100K if there's no 100K to give you, right? So how do you help start solving bigger problems? And it starts with that P&L, yeah? Check and balance. You need to start to look at the business in terms of numbers. You want to take numbers from a firm, figure out how the firm makes the numbers in the first place, okay? Other skills, negotiation skills, yeah, spotting constraints. So operational skills is really good as well. Where are the constraints in the business? Yeah, I've done podcasts previously on theory of constraints. There are guests coming on in the future about theory of constraints as well. Look, you can scale any business as long as you keep focusing on where the constraint is and how you start to bring the right people, the right resources in to leverage those constraints and build it bigger. These are just some examples of 100K club skills that you guys need to learn. And this is why you need to subscribe to this podcast and follow it on YouTube so you can get the visuals as well, so you can learn this stuff. Because if you don't, then a lot of the things that you see out there aren't leading you in the right direction. It's as simple and black and white as I've just said it. You want to make money, you got to make a company money, right? Whether that be your own company or someone else's company. And personally, I think you're better off doing in someone else's company, right? And just figuring out the skills in it, because it's a lot more secure, a lot more safe, and you can start side hustles. You can start other incomes. You can build your income in one business and then invest in the other companies, yeah? And scale that company up that you're in right now. Why go and start from scratch again? People go, oh, yeah, I need to be a fucking entrepreneur. Bullshit. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. Did you know this? Here's a stat for you. Most entrepreneurs aren't even making the same salary as a basic salary, right? They call themselves entrepreneurs, but they're not turning over the same as what they would be doing in a basic salary. So good for them. Lead them to the Instagram life, right? I'm telling you about how to actually make 100K and the people that I've worked with and how they've earned 100K. So, next step, number 5, building your network. Your network is your net worth, okay? So for me, when I'm working and scaling up businesses and my own businesses and the companies I invest in, I can call now on the right people, yeah? Finance person, operations person, salesperson. We bring them all in, right? These coaches, these mentors, these consultants all come together. And I know that by me being in any business, I bring my network with me and go, hey, look, you need Bill right now. Yeah. You need Fred right now. You need Sarah right now. You bring the right people in. Okay. Don't try and do it all yourself. Because remember, master of all trades is a master of none. Okay. Jack of all trades is the master of none, is the actual saying, isn't he? So don't try and be that jack of all trades. Be good at the one thing that you need to be the top 1% in, right? I'm clear on my 1%, and I'm the top 1% in helping people reach 100K a year. How do I do that? Well, I've got processes and procedures to help people do that, right? If that procedure had a constraint of this person needs to learn new sales skills, I can take them so far. And then I would go, right, now you're making that money. How about you reinvesting it in somebody that can take you even further? This is the point, isn't it? It helps the person achieve their goals. And that's what I'm known for. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for to make an impact in someone's life? And that's what will get you to that top 1%. So this brings you on to number 6 now, building your brand. What sort of brand do you want to be known as? Okay. You're going to be in that top 1%. Guess what? You need to go into learn to be somebody that can get out there and is well recognized. You do not want to be flying under the radar. Yeah. The world's best kept secret. So what you're going to need? Marketing skills. You're going to need marketing skills. Marketing isn't just for business. Marketing is for personal, building a personal brand. So in the future, we'll be bringing guests on about how to build a personal brand. There's a few people lined up. So make sure you follow this episode, follow this podcast, because there'll be more people coming on soon to talk about personal brand. Now, your personal brand is how the world perceives you. You cannot be in that top 1% if you are the world's best kept secret. So, working on your personal brand, first steps. What should you do? Well, it's 2024. I can Google anybody. I can go onto LinkedIn and I'll see what your personal brand is like. So if your LinkedIn profile isn't up to date, if you're not posting on there, if you're not interacting on there, if you haven't got a banner that actually symbolizes you and what you do, yeah, how are you ever going to be worth more to anybody else if you're the world's best kept secret? So think about it. How do you build your personal brand? Number 7, dealing with setbacks and failure. As I said before about optimism, how do you perceive setbacks and failure? Do you think that a setback is just like, hey, that wasn't meant for me? Or do you see a setback as like, right, this is some learning in this that I need to gather if I'm going to be in that top 1%? And remember, you don't fail. You just learn from it. You learn. And as long as you keep on going, eventually you'll get there. As long as the vehicle is right, yeah? As long as the vehicle is right. Even if everything implodes, it doesn't matter because you've still took lots of learnings for your next venture. Okay? So it's a mindset shift again, isn't it? But the people that can't have this resilience, this pathfinding skills, as you mentioned in psychological capital, then they can't move forward. Yeah? So it's really important for step 7 that you deal with setbacks in the right way and have that right mindset around what a setback actually means. Okay? Now, bringing on to the next one is step 8, and that's adaptability and continuous improvement. So always got to be adapting to the environment. The world is always changing, okay? If you're not growing, you're dying. Just look at how the world is now compared to 2 or 3 years ago. Everything with AI, you should be using AI now, right? It's free. You can go into ChatGPT. Everyone should need to use it. Guess how many people in businesses are actually using ChatGPT? Look at the stats. Go and look it up. People think it's some fucking voodoo thing, right? It's simple. It's just that people aren't investing time in it. So the only constraint that you've actually got is investing in your own learning. Yeah? Time. Put time aside, invest it in your learning, and you will start to enhance any skill that you want and adapting. And if you're not adapting and you think that you can stay the same, then you're listening to the wrong podcast because there is no way you're going to reach 100K if you stay the same. Okay? Growth mindset, this is called. Adaptability and continuous improvement is essential if you're going to make this happen. Okay? I'm very passionate about this, ladies and gents, because I want to see you reach those goals, those financial goals that you're after. I'm very passionate about this. Okay. So I've had to find different ways in my career. When I used to be a business coach and I first started out, yeah, one of the first things I did is because I used to be a director, well, I still am a director and own multiple businesses, I had a very directive approach. Now, that directive approach only works with some clients. You can't just be in there all ballsy, telling people what to do, more consultant than coach, and then think that you're going to get a result. Yeah. So I thought I fucking knew it all. But the reality is a coach isn't somebody that just tells somebody, they coach somebody. Yeah. That difference, meaning, is that you've got to actually. Have you ever heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? Yeah. Well, coaching is about, right, you've said that you want to get there. How do we get that person to drink? Now, I'm talking about the coaching skills within businesses. So coaching skills within businesses, how important is it to managers, yeah, that they set out the process, set out the system, and they have a lot of new employees start or existing employees start to use the process and they don't actually fucking use it, yeah? Because you can't lead the horse to water and make it drink. So these sort of skills in coaching were new skills that I had to develop over the last 15 years of being a business coach, then to then get the right clients so I could help people grow and scale. Yeah. So when I started to see that my skills 15 years ago weren't working, I go, okay, what am I missing? Right? How do I take from the lessons and start to improve myself, continuously improve myself so I can become better at helping people get results? Yeah. Because think about it, ladies and gents, you're listening to this podcast right now. You can go on YouTube, you can go on to read some books and listen to some other podcasts and you go, oh, yeah. That's some really good information. Doesn't mean you'll fucking use it. Yeah. How many times have you been to seminars or workshops, made a lot of notes, put them in the drawers and then never used it again? Right? Well, this is the point, isn't it? It's because the person who delivered it wasn't a very effective coach, wasn't very effective at actually getting it ingrained and finding the reason, finding the drivers, back to this psychological capital thing again, finding the drivers of what makes that person move forward, execute, right? And these are the keys, is that when you start to think of it that way, it's not just having the knowledge and the experience, it's about how do you apply it in someone else's world so they can get a result as well. And if you can nail that, then you're starting to learn the skills of how to really move people forward. And that's where I find that my niche is, because I've had to adapt and have continuous improvement for the people that want the result. I've been working with clients for a long time, 100 million plus in client revenue. And the only way that would happen is if we start to look at, right, what results are we getting so far? Did it work? Did it work? Did it work? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Building blocks. Now, that's happened over 15 years, right? Right. So you see people think, oh, okay, well, I can just become an overnight success and I'm going to go and do it straight away. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen. You see, it's not just about having the knowledge, it's about applying it. Adaptability is key. So there you go, ladies and gents. There's 8 steps, 8 points of how you can start to becoming that top 1%. What has resonated with you the most? What have been your biggest learnings and takeaways from this podcast? Are there anything that you think that it could help other people with? Yeah. What's your niche? What do you want to be the top 1% in? What do the top 1% get paid in that industry? How can you go and help more people now? Well, one thing you can do is, if you've learned anything from this podcast that you think could change someone else's life, then just copy the link, copy it, share it, and just slide it into someone else's DMs, because you could be helping somebody else realize their true passion and be in the top 1% in some other industry that they're not aware of yet. Okay? So, A players, you are in that top 1% just by having the mindset of an A player and listening to this podcast. So I really appreciate what you've been doing. And by listening to this podcast makes it really on purpose and on mission. So like this, leave some comments. So I know your feedback on YouTube or Spotify, and let me know what you want to see on the future A Player episodes, and I'll cover those as well. And if it's not me, I can bring some more depth into people that are breaking that 100K barrier and beyond to share with you the information that can help you increase your income in any job. Be great.